All right, let's turn our attention, though, to the rest of the Week 15 slate. We'll get started with a huge game in the AFC East between the Buffalo Bills and the New England Patriots. And, Florio, is there a Buffalo Bills pass catcher that maybe we can pay attention to this week?
Yeah, I think Dalton Kincaid is a tight end that you should 100% be playing this week. He's been the Bills' most efficient pass catcher this season. He's also been just one of the most efficient tight ends this season. And last week was a good matchup, but I do think the Bills found something in the last couple of weeks featuring the tight ends more in the passing game. And the Bills have changed their wide receiver personnel, and now they have Shavers and Gabe Davis outside. They're both excellent run blockers, and they are help creating more space after the catch for their catch and run options, which are Shakir and Dalton Kincaid. Plus, Patriots top 10 in fantasy points per game to tight ends. I think this could be a very high-scoring, back-and-forth kind of game, and I want Dalton Kincaid in my lineups where I have him.
You know what, as the president and CEO of the Josh Allen fan club on this show, it pains me to say that I'm going to be starting Drake May in this. That doesn't pain me. I'm just starting a really good quarterback. He's had 9 games with at least 2 touchdown passes this season, leads the NFL in passer rating. He's the only player with 200 passing yards in each of the team's games this season. Of course, he's never thrown for 300 yards in a fixture yet in his NFL career, but this could be the day. And the Bills have allowed the 10th most rushing yards to quarterbacks this season. That has been an aspect of Drake May's game that people really have overlooked, and it's really been an effective use for him. So it goes without saying, you're starting Drake May this weekend.
Fixture? Are you going to say the Bills are also the Patriots at the top of the table, too?
I was trying to see how long it would take me to inception you guys into using terms like fixture and pitch and out to touch. And today's the day. It hit.
No, because like Laquan does this all the time on the podcast. If you listen to the NFL Fantasy Football Podcast, we get a lot of it. It just washes over me at this point. Anyway.
Anytime I hear besmirch, I think of you, Ring.
Oh, thank you very much.
There it is.
I feel besmirched by you saying that. Thank you.
Another divisional matchup. It's the Chargers and the Chiefs. And I'm going to go a little back to the future on this one and say that Quentin Johnston has some sleepery vibes. And I know it hasn't been great for him in the back half of the season, but if we go back to week 1, when these teams played, Johnston, 5 catches, 79 yards, a pair of touchdowns, almost 25 fantasy points. In fact, he's been pretty good against Kansas City in 2 of his last 3 games, 15 or more fantasy points against the Chiefs. Kansas City, the last few weeks, second most yards allowed to wide receivers. They're not getting much pressure without blitzing the quarterback. And Herbert against the blitz has been pretty good, top 10 in terms of passing yards there. And when he's getting pressure, he tends to be looking in QJ's direction. So it's definitely a deep sleeper proposition because of how he's played, but maybe a wide receiver 3 there for QJ this week.
Yeah, I'm going to go back to the past and say Kareem Hunt is a sleeper in this game as well, because the Chargers secondary has just been shut down all season, but this defense is leaky against the run. They've struggled against big plays. They've allowed the 7th most yards per carry this season. And don't look now, but Kareem Hunt, 80 or more scrimmage yards in 2 of his last 3 games. And then he's always has a good chance of scoring a touchdown because right now he's 5th in goal line carries in the NFL. And I know this is going to annoy you guys, but not surprise you at all. I've never seen Back to the Future.
Not even sure.
You know what?
Whatever
at this point. We'll stay in the AFC West. We got the Packers and the Broncos. Brett Favre, not that. But, Rank, apparently the Packers have found a wide receiver 1, it looks like.
They have. Christian Watson's been playing very well over the last couple of weeks, and I think for those of you who are looking for somebody in this one, if you're looking for the Packers player to start, it is Christian Watson. He's had 5 touchdowns in his last 4 games. He's had at least 80 receiving yards in back-to-back games, and you know what? Right here, and you put a lot of man. Like he was really able to take advantage of the man coverage by the Bears last week. It is something that he really feasts on. Jordan Love does a really nice job of it too. And the Denver Broncos run a lot of man. The only difference is Denver does a much better job at putting pressure on the quarterback with 4 rushers than the Bears do. So there could be a chance for some turnovers. But you know what? Given the volume play, I think that Christian Watson probably is a start.
I mean, he's done a little bit of everything in that offense. Meanwhile, on the other side, RJ Harvey. The breakout has been fun. I'm telling you to just be a little bit wary because he has been very touchdown dependent this year. The 75 rushing yards last week was great, but it was just the second time he's gone over 50 rushing yards in a game. Only 4 running backs have gone over 70 yards in a game against the Packers. What will help? The recent increase in targets. You love to see that, but it's also not a big play passing option there. I mean, just has not gotten a lot of yards. Targets, the catches will help. So I understand starting him, but I'm concerned about what his output might be potentially coming up this weekend. Moving over to the more another divisional game, I should say. It is the Ravens and the Bengals. And normally we're starting tight ends against the Bengals, Florio, but you're starting a Bengals tight end, huh?
Yeah, I think Gesicki is in play, but also, let's get a little weird in this one, right? I think with T. Higgins being out this week, Mitchell Tinsley is a sleeper for the Bengals, because I know a lot of people are going to be like, Yoshi Boss is the guy, right? But I think it's Mitchell Tinsley because I believe he is better suited to play that X receiver routes that T. Higgins normally runs. And we saw that in this exact matchup 2 weeks ago when Tinsley had 9 targets against this Ravens defense. I know it didn't lead to a huge fantasy day, but him and Burrow just missed on a couple of big plays. And if you need evidence of what this guy could do, just go watch his game against the Commanders from the preseason. He will look like a T. Higgins clone if you just cover up the numbers and watch the film.
Well, I'm going to go with the Baltimore Ravens tight ends, whether it's Mark Andrews, whether it's Isaiah Likely. Now, obviously, Mark Andrews has popped up on the injury report, so this is something that you're going to be able to, that you're going to need to monitor throughout the weekend. But either way, you could probably get away with playing both of these guys this weekend. They will get their opportunities against a Bengals defense that has allowed 15 receiving touchdowns to tight ends this year. That's the most by 6.
By a lot.
But as I have the floor here for a moment, there's some students who've walked in here. Don't say it out loud, but by a show of hands, have any of you seen the movie Back to the Future? Show of hands.
All of them. Literally all of them.
It's not
all of them raise their hand.
It's not a generational thing at all. It is
It's definitely
Michael
not all
F.
of
Florio
them.
not having taste in music thing. All of these students just raise their hands.
Everyone, yep,
There they are. Hey, wave to the camera. Just wave.
Just wave.
There it is.
They
Sorry.
literally all raise their
Hey, you're
hands.
going to need to sign a release when you get out here.
Maybe it's a me
Sorry
thing.
about that. I was just curious. I didn't know. Like, listen, the youth, I don't know sometimes. It's like that scene from The Office.
The youth? He's like 35. What are you doing?
Hey, 34.
Oh, my bad. Whatever. Anyway, coming up on NFL Fantasy Live, it's a homecoming for Jared Goff this Sunday when he returns to LA to take on Matthew Stafford and the Rams. So will the former first overall pick find fantasy fortune in the Golden State? That answer and more when we return. Welcome back to NFL Fantasy Live. And with Phillip Rivers attempting a comeback at age 44, Tom Brady has some thoughts saying, quote, I certainly could still play quarterback in the NFL at age 48. You know,
Do it!
You know what would be wild, Frank, is if he was part owner of a team that had quarterback issues.
Right.
Could you imagine?
Be the bridge quarterback.
Be wild. If
There it is.
It could be
Anyway,
a movie.
It would be a movie. Anyway, speaking of the Colts.
One that you wouldn't see.
The Colts in Seattle taking on the Seahawks. And right now, Shane Steichen uncommitted to a quarterback, at least publicly. I think we all sort of know where they're leaning. But I will say, I still think you can start Tyler Warren this week against the Seahawks. Now, this is mostly about the matchup because for as good as Seattle has been, they have been pretty bad against tight ends. They're the second best matchup against the position. Now, mind you, they're a distant second because the Bengals have just been straight up awful against tight ends, but they're giving up the second most receptions and yards to the position. For what it's worth, if Riley Leonard is the starter, Warren is his second most targeted player behind Michael Pittman. But either way, regardless of who's going to be under center, I'm starting Tyler Warren this week.
What if it's Tyler Warren at quarterback?
Even better.
That would be rad. Speaking of quarterbacks, I'm going to go with the guy that you turned your back on so coldly. Sam Darnold.
What?
You besmirched him. No, just kidding. You know what? He's, listen, a couple of weeks ago, didn't have great fantasy performances as the Seahawks continued to stack wins. Last week, we started to see the fantasy version that a lot of us had hoped for when we drafted him this summer. Now he's got a really good matchup against the Colts, who've allowed the second most passing yards per game in the last 3 weeks. They've allowed at least 17 fantasy points to quarterbacks in 2 of the last 3, and I expect Sam Darnold to reach that number this week.
All right, big one coming up here in Los Angeles this week. The Detroit Lions coming to town to take on the Los Angeles Rams. And, Rank, you're going out on a limb with your QB start for this one.
You know what? No, somebody asked on this show yesterday, or somebody.
Really?
I don't know. Somebody was asking me about Matthew Stafford. I'm like, are we not to the point that we know we're just starting Matthew Stafford week in and week out? And I understand, like, some people might have ended up with a situation where you had like Drake May. I think this was the exact question. Like Drake May, Matthew Stafford. I'm like, you gotta just stick with one because it'll drive you crazy to try to ping pong back and forth and play the matchups because the science behind it is always, you can always make a case for either guy, but I love him going up against the Lions. Obviously, it's a revenge game, but Matthew Stafford has at least 2 touchdowns in 7 consecutive games, 35 passing touchdowns this season, 9 more than the next closest receiver. And we've seen a lot of this too, is that when the Rams are ahead and they're inside the 5-yard line, not only are they throwing the ball, they're usually throwing it to Devontae Adams. So yes, get Matthew Stafford into your lineup this week.
Hey, Laquan, if you're listening, Rank said Stafford pads his stats, not me. I think on the other side, Jared Goff is in play in this one as well because just like Rank was saying, I expect a lot of points in this one. In fact, the Lions could be chasing points, and regardless, I expect them to be very, very aggressive in this one. And while the Rams have been elite against the run and early in the year were a tough matchup, since week 10, they have allowed the 4th most passing yards and touchdowns. And I know some of you out there might be like, but it's a road game for Jared. Yeah, it's still indoors, and it's a building he knows extremely well.
Whoa.
I think Jared Goff's in play.
It's a canopy. Mike, we've taken that tour. If you listen, and I know there's a new group of students here. When you go next door, do not tell the people at SoFi that it's a dome stadium because they will get on your case. It's a canopy. Don't make Michael's mistake.
Dome stadiums don't have lightning delays. That's all I'm saying. We're going to stay in the NFC West. We're going to talk the Cardinals heading down to Houston to take on the Texans. And look, Florio, Michael Wilson's been the new hotness the last few weeks, so obviously we're just starting him against Houston, right?
Yeah, 31 fantasy points per game when Marvin Harrison Jr. is out, and he's out this week. But I still think you could try to get away from Michael because I just fear the Texans defense that much. They've allowed the fewest fantasy points per game to wide receivers. Last week, they held Rashee Rice in check. And in fact, 52% of passes to out wide wide receivers have been completed against them this year. Wilson runs his routes out wide when Marv is out. But with a big name like this, it's always option dependent, right? You're not just sitting him for anybody, but I would sit him for like McLaurin, Wan'Dale Robinson, Jawan Jennings, and Justin Jefferson, which oddly I have to say him here. But yeah, not just sitting him for anybody.
All right, well, I'm going to go with Dalton Schultz on the other side against the Arizona Cardinals. Some of it's because he's running routes from the slot where the Cardinals are struggling to cover guys. Also because he's a tight end, and the Cardinals struggle to cover those as well. The last few weeks, this has been a pretty narrowly funneled passing game. It's mostly been Nico Collins and Dalton Schultz with a little bit of Jaden Higgins sprinkled in just for effect. So I think this is a game that C.J. Stroud actually pops for the first time in a while, and I think Dalton Schultz is going to be a big part of that. So if you are looking to throw a tight end in the mix, I wouldn't even say streaming because at this point Dalton Schultz is, low-key a tight end one. I think he's worth having in your lineup this week against Arizona. We'll stay with another NFC team, another divisional matchup. This between the Commanders and the New York Football Giants. And, Florio mentioned Terry McLaurin, so I guess we're all on board, right, with Scary Terry this week?
100%. I don't think it matters who the quarterback is. Obviously, Marcus Mariota is going to be starting in the Mariota. But Terry McLaurin has 2 receiving touchdowns in the last 3 games. He's tied for the 5th most targets in the NFL since he returned from his injury in Week 13. And what we love too, great matchup against the New York Giants. They've allowed the 4th most receiving yards to wide receivers this season. So I would expect Terry McLaurin to have a pretty good game against those Giants.
I also think Tyrone Tracy could have a pretty good game against the Commanders. Since Cam Skattebo went down for the season, Tracy's had almost 50% of the team's rushing attempts, had over 20 touches in weeks 11 and 12, and seemed to be on a similar path in week 13 before he had a hip injury. He's had the bye week to get healthy and ready to go. Now he gets to face Washington's 29th ranked run defense. They've allowed a top 24 running back in 4 straight games. So if nothing else, Tracy's floor right now is an RB2 with a chance to maybe do a little bit better if he can find the end zone during the ball game. So there you go, the Commanders and the Giants. And that gets us to our Next Gen Nuggets with our researcher, Kendall Mursky, a.k.a. Next Gen Ken. So we were just talking about the Commanders and the Giants, but you took a little bit of a deeper look at that NFC East matchup.
Yeah, I want to focus on Jackson Dart, and it's funny, you guys talked on both sides of the ball in this game, and it's really a big reason why I like Jackson Dart. We have two competent offenses going against two struggling defenses. This feels like a game that's going to be a race to 30, kind of like what we just saw last night. But a big reason is because of play-action passing. Dart has the 10th highest play-action dropback rate this season, but look at how Washington has defended those dropbacks. They're in the bottom quarter of the league in each of these 5 categories. But the one that really pops out to me is quarterback pressure rate, as they've been really ineffective at affecting the quarterback process this season. But what's even more shocking is the amount of explosive plays that they've let up. The Commanders have allowed a 15-plus yard completion on 25.6% of play-action pass attempts that they've defended this season, and that's the second highest rate in the NFL. But beyond just the play-action stats, the Commanders have allowed the 4th most fantasy points to the position this season, and we've seen Jackson Dart has proved to us this year. He's a high floor play. His lowest output was 15 points, and he's averaging somewhere around 21-ish points per game. So I think with a combination of all of these factors, we're going to see a high ceiling performance from Jackson Dart this week.
Styles make fights. Both these teams have bad defenses. There could be a lot of fantasy points in play for this one. So great job, Kendall. Appreciate that. Meanwhile, coming up here on NFL Fantasy Live, it's a Sunday night showdown between the Vikings and Cowboys in Big D. But is JJ an automatic play for fantasy owners across the country? That's surprise answer and more when we return. Time to get you caught up on what you need to know, and if you know, you know. And we will start in the NFC, where NFL Network insider Tom Pelissero is reporting that CeeDee Lamb has cleared concussion protocol and will be on the field this Sunday night against the Vikings. The star wide receiver suffered the head injury last Thursday against the Detroit Lions, which opened the door for wideout Ryan Flanoy to have a major breakout. So, Rank, now that CeeDee is back in action, what are you doing if you spend some fab on Flanoy this week?
You're leaving him on the bench. Like, it's the best case scenario. I would rather play CeeDee Lamb. That's the guy that I prefer to play. I did pick him up as a backup option. That's what we do. Like, this time of the season, this is what we're not trying to find flyers on players or anything. We want to back up the studs that we're playing, and right now it might behoove you to go through and look and see, if you have CMC, for instance, you have Brian Robinson Jr. or something like that. You want to make sure that your studs are handcuffed to the appropriate replacement. If Flournoy is not going to be the guy that they're counting on, fine. I will eat the $3. It's fine. I'm good.
I think especially if you have the first round bye too in your playoffs, make sure you have that just in case something happens, so you're not scrambling on Monday or Tuesday to add somebody off the waiver wire. Back to the game previews. We got the Jags and the Jets down in. Are we going the original Duval, or can we do the Duval?
I like Liam Cohen's original Duval. I think that's something that they should lean into, but,
they're playing well.
Let's do it.
One thing that I wouldn't lean into,
Tony Khan's a showman. He should know this.
is starting Breece Hall. I would tell you to beware of starting Breece Hall this week. And look, Breece, it's not you. It's sort of the company you keep. I mean, Garrett Wilson, we haven't seen him in a few weeks. We haven't seen Justin Fields in a bit. Tyrod Taylor's not going to start. It's going to be Brady Cook at quarterback. And if I am the Jacksonville Jaguars, I am taking away Breece Hall as much as possible and trying to make the quarterback beat me. Shouldn't be too difficult because the Jags do have one of the top run defenses in the NFL. They've allowed 100 rushing yards in a game total by a team just 3 times all season long. So you might be forced to starting Breece Hall. You don't have to like starting Breece Hall.
Yeah, that's exactly the position I am in a league myself. But you 100% have to start the Jags defense. Look, the Jets for some reason, did not go out and recruit Chad Pennington to start for them in a pinch this week. So it's going to be Brady Cook, like Marcus said. And last week with Cook, 6 sacks, 2 picks by the Jets. Sacks have been an issue for the Jets all year long. They've taken them at the 3rd highest rate, regardless of who the quarterback has been. It has been an issue. But now the Jags actually get a week 2 game plan for Brady Cook. And the Jags defense has been a lot better since their bye. Elite against the run. They've been getting after the quarterback at a very high rate. They are a must play for me this week.
All right, over to the Sunday night matchup between the Vikings and the Cowboys. And Rank, there are 2 wolves inside of George Pickens, and apparently both of them are eating this year.
They are. Well, the cool thing, obviously we know now to start CeeDee Lamb, and Flournoy is going to go to the bench, but also start George Pickens in a game that I anticipate being very high scoring. I understand a lot of us were stung last Thursday when he did not have his best game of the season, but he has 4 games this season with at least 29 plus fantasy points. Minnesota has allowed the 5th most yards to targets to wide receivers this year. I know that they're a good defense. Brian Flores is one of the best in the game, but so is Dak Prescott. So I really trust this Cowboys offense, and I think with having CeeDee Lamb out there, it's going to bring a level of calmness, and it's going to open up some opportunities for George Pickens, so I'm starting him.
So on the other side, I've got a sleeper tag on one JJ9 McCarthy, and I know that seems a little bit weird because it hasn't necessarily been a great season for him, although last week did have the 3 touchdown passes against Washington. Florio pointed out on Monday's podcast that McCarthy's worst games have come against either some of the top-rated elite defenses in the league or defenses he was facing for a second time. The Dallas Cowboys are neither one of those, and over the last 3 weeks, Cowboys given up over 280 passing yards per game, 6 touchdowns, and no interceptions. So understand, I get it. The ceiling for McCarthy is relatively low, but because the Cowboys have been so much better against the run lately, it could be an opportunity for McCarthy to get things going through the air. So that now gets us to Seize the Season, presented by Caesars Sportsbook. And according to Caesars Sportsbook, here are the most likely players to score the first touchdown during Sunday night's showdown between the Vikings and the Cowboys. Javonte Williams there up top, followed by George Pickens. Then you got Aaron Jones, Justin Jefferson, and Jordan Mason. So, Florio, of those folks there, or maybe somebody not pictured, who do you think finds pay dirt first?
Look, I like George Pickens. I agree with everything Rank was just saying. But if you want some better odds and maybe a little bit of fun, how about Justin Jefferson? Because like you were saying, Marcus, the Cowboys have struggled against the pass. They have been lit up this year by wide receivers, allow the most fantasy points, yards, and touchdowns to receivers, specifically the most to out wide receivers and on the deep ball. So whether it comes after a long drive to open the game or just on one big catch, I think Justin Jefferson has his best game of the season this week, and he finds pay dirt from JJ for the Minnesota Vikings.
From JJ to JJ, you gotta love it. New users can bet $1 to boost their next 20 bets by 100%. Must be 21 or older. See Caesars.com/promos for full terms.